Bonanza, get your bonanza.
Anybody else? He's not exclusive.
Paper, miss?
What for?
You might find someone in here who could read it to you.
Welcome to 1910. This is Life in the 1900s newspapers, and we are going to read a 1910 newspaper together from Seattle, Washington. Today's video will be focused on the ordinary citizen. Today's newspaper and issue is the Seattle Post-Intelligencer from Wednesday, April 13th, 1910. We'll start with this first article about things that are in a town. Things in one town. A liar, a sponger, a smart aleck, a blatherskite, some pretty girls, a girl who giggles, a weather prophet, a neighborhood feud, half a dozen lunatics, a woman who tattles, one Jacksonian Democrat, more loafers than it needs, men who see every dogfight, a stock law that is not enforced, a widower that is too gay for his age, a preacher who thinks he ought to run the town, a few who know how to run the affairs of the country. What was Seattle like in 1910? Take a look at these 1910s photographs of people on the streets in Seattle, Washington. Monorail inventor would build here. A monorail for Seattle, built upon a wooden structure, was a suggestion made last evening by William H. Boyes in his address before the Commercial Club at the close of its business meeting. Mr. Boyes, who is the inventor of a monorail, has recently come to Seattle to interest capital in a new system of railway for this city. He said that since coming to Seattle, it had been suggested to him, in view of the great amount of lumber at hand, that such a system could be built upon a wooden structure. Mr. Boyes expressed no doubt as to the feasibility and expressed the opinion that in the view of the high cost of steel, it would be desirable to have a wooden structure in this city. He further intimated that such a road was likely to be built, but when asked at the close of the meeting who was behind such a project, he said that for the present he cannot disclose the supporters. One of the more popular places to visit in Seattle in 1910, not only for the residents, but also for the visitors, was ye old curiosity shop. Among its many attractions was a jawbone of a whale, largest in U.S., weigh 1 ton each, over 20 feet long. A giant clamshell weighing 161 pounds. An ivory tusk of a mammoth, prehistoric elephant that lived in Alaska 30,000 years ago. And a petrified snail weighing 67 pounds. A new punishment. There are numerous ways of punishing a man. Sometimes he is sent to the penitentiary. Sometimes he is hanged. Why not order him to attend a dance and remain until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then force him to arise at the usual time next morning and perform his usual work all day? That would be something new and exquisite in punishment. Yes, some of the regular hard-working men of the time thought dancing was torture. Here is some 1910 footage of the most popular dance in 1910, the Lindy Hop. Taft's niece arrives here, the bride of a Seattle man. Mr. and Mrs. George H. Snowden arrived in Seattle yesterday from their wedding tour in Europe and are temporarily at the Perry. Mrs. Snowden, formerly Miss Louise Walbridge Taft, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Henry Taft, brother of President Taft, was married at 4 o'clock, December 30th, at the family residence. 36 West 48th Street, New York. What concerns ordinary people in Seattle? City ordinances. No sidewalk skating. Roller skating and coasting on the sidewalks must be discontinued, according to a police order issued yesterday. Frequent reports of collisions between pedestrians and the little folk on skates and coasters have been received recently. A city ordinance prohibits the pastime. Here's an account of an unusual accident. Brewery must pay Barber $150 for cuts in his scalp. While Edward C. Farley was telling a customer a funny story and shaving him at his place of business in the basement of the Savoy Hotel, where he maintains a barber shop, the driver of a beer wagon of the Seattle Brewing and Malting Company dropped a barrel of beer on the glass lights in the sidewalk over Farley's head, precipitating a shower of broken glass that cut the story short and also cut and bruised the barber's scalp. Yesterday, a jury in Judge J.T. Ronald's branch of the Superior Court brought in a verdict for $150 damages in Farley's favor. He had sued for $1,500. The accident happened on June 18, 1909, and meanwhile the plaintiff's scalp healed up, leaving, however, scars which the jury was permitted to examine yesterday. The brewing company alleged that either the plaintiff, the city, or the Savoy management was negligent, and therefore responsible for the shattering bump of the beer barrel and Farley's contusions. But the jury aimed no damages in any of these directions. 1910, common people could get a bit of entertainment at several theaters in Seattle. Laugh Riot at Orpheum. Tom Ryan and Miss Richfield are offering the Orpheum goers this week one of the greatest laugh riots that have been seen at the Big Bungalow for many a moon, and there have been some great big laughs coming over at that. Their vehicle is one of Will Cresley's imitable playlets entitled Mag Haggerty's Reception. It is no fair telling the story, but it is fair to say that from the opening performances, this great pair of entertainers have had the audience almost pulling up their seats. The whole bill is on par with the headline act. It's almost impossible to pick the winner, with nothing save winners in the going. Here's another rave review at a different theater, the Star Theater. Pipe Dream at Star. Ed Armstrong said that Midnight in Chinatown would be a pipe dream, and it is. Just how anyone not under the influence of the bamboo could concoct the hodgepodge of good fun and great nonsense that is filling up the Star Theater this week. It's hard to imagine. It is another of those Armstrong mixtures, but it is different than anything else that talented producer has yet put over. And it has them going all along the line. There's a big chorus girls contest coming up for Friday, so get your ready clothes. My husband and I just got back from a trip to Seattle, and we saw a show at the historical Moore Theater. Look what was playing in 1910. The Roundup next Sunday. Beginning next Sunday evening, Claw and Ellinger's great production of The Roundup with Marcelin Arbuckle will open a week's entertainment at the Moore Theater. This play has the biggest of all outdoors. It shows a picture of Western life that has never been equaled. The stretches of prairie land, the splendors of gulches, the hardiness of the people and the strength of their loves and hates are vividly put before the spectators, while the battle between the Indians and soldiers in the third act is the most realistic scene of its kind ever enacted. Matinees will be given on Thursday and Saturday. Owing to the demand for seats for this engagement, the sale was opened on Monday instead of Thursday and is on now. Just look at all these theaters in Seattle where you could see motion pictures. Yes, in 1910, they had motion pictures. Take a short look of how it all started.
The first germ of the idea of moving pictures is found in a child's toy, the traumatrope. This device, invented by an English physicist, Sir John Herschel, consisted of a cardboard disc with a separate image painted on each side. If you twirl the disc rapidly, the images seem to form a new and completely different picture. It is, of course, an optical illusion. Joseph Plateau, a Belgian physicist, heard of this strange trick played by the human eye and decided to investigate it. For 25 seconds, he stared at the sun, and for the first time, established that the retina of the eye retains an impression of a luminous object a full third of a second after the actual light source has disappeared. A simple experiment proves it. If you turn an indented disc in front of a bulb, you will first see a succession of lights and blanks. When you speed up the rotation of the disc, the peculiar property of your eye seems to dissolve the blanks between the lights. On the basis of this physical property of the human eye, Plateau was the first to invent a device which seemed to make inanimate pictures move. He drew a series of images representing the different positions of a galloping horse on a cardboard disc. Little slits in the disc let the light through. Looking through the slits, while holding the rotating disc to a mirror, you had the optical illusion that the static, painted figures were gradually changing their position. You seemed to see the horse move. Reynaud went further. Not until he invented the théâtre optique was he satisfied, and the théâtre optique was a real theater. Here, the small strips were replaced by a long band containing 500 hand-painted slides drawn on transparent gelatin. Small holes punched between each image foreshadow the perforations of modern film. Each hole meshes into the teeth of a large wheel, rotating at the same speed as the 36 mirrors at the center. Each individual image is lighted up separately. By an interplay of mirrors and lenses, the ray of light is reflected back to a mobile mirror, which in turn projects the enlarged image onto different sections of the screen. The figures move according to the whim of the projectionist. He can speed it up, make it go backwards, or stop it altogether. A second lantern throws the background onto the screen. This was the fulfillment of Reynaud's ambition. Here he could tell a real story, lasting a full quarter of an hour. Here his actors were life-size. Here he could almost create the illusion of reality.
Help wanted female. In answering any of these ads, please mention the Post-Intelligencer. An ambitious, energetic woman of good address wanted to represent high-grade corset, award gold medal by the famous Paris and London dress exhibition, state age, experience, if any, and compensation desired, rapid advancement if competent. This is an exceptional opportunity for the right woman to obtain a most desirable position with a high-grade Paris and New York corset house. But do not apply unless you mean business and are not afraid to work. Address 2 Callan Corset Company, Suite 1165B, 28 West 38th Street, New York. Yes, they used to separate female and male jobs, but you do know in Seattle in 1910, they also separated Japanese employment agents. Aoki's Japanese Employment Agency, Maine 3517. Yes, I have good boys. Yes, I will send them immediately. Yes, I have porters, waiters, janitors. Yes, I have day work boys. And I sell real estate. Yes, I do general contracting. 503 Main Street, Seattle, Washington. Yes, they had automobiles in 1910. Here's an ad for them. For sale, automobiles. Automobile Bargains, a 1907 Pope Hartford $1,000. Here's a picture of a 1907 Pope Hartford automobile. This car must have been only for the very well-to-do, because $1,000 today would be about $33,633. It reminds you of that truck on the Beverly Hillbillies. But that was a 1921 Oldsmobile. For sale in our paper is a 1907 Great Smith touring car for $1,250. Here's one at a better bargain, a 1907 Franklin Runabout, only $800. And these are advertised by Newt and Keena at 600 East Pike Street. Were cars safe back then? Here's something that happened in Portland. She leaps when Otto runs away. Leaping from a runaway electric brougham, Mrs. John C. Eden, wife of the president of the Superior Portland Cement Company, saved her life yesterday afternoon when the machine dashed backwards down Madison Street. Miss Eden was returning from downtown and was between 9th and Terry Avenues when the power stopped and the brakes refused to work. Immediately, the car began to roll backwards. Mrs. Eden leapt out. She attributed the accident to a breakdown of the mechanism. Though she has been driven an electric car for 5 years, it was the first accident. In the newspaper with the caption that says, "The wrecked Detroit Electric climbing Madison Street Hill under its own power after the accident." Speaking of early automobile accidents, this car that you see right now is a 1916 New York Pullman Deluxe Coupe. This famous actress owned a white one, and tragically in 1917, as she was going down a hill, her brakes gave out and her car overturned. She died a few weeks later. Who was she? Silent movie actress Florence BADIE. Aw, the paperboy. Here's an article about a couple of aspiring paperboys. Two boys build up a growing business. The first picture is Gilbert McQuaid, and the second is Norman Chittenden. Norman Chittenden and Gilbert McQuaid, who are known in West Seattle as the firm of McQuaid and Chittenden, are two young merchants who sell the 6 o'clock edition of the Post-Intelligencer at the West Seattle Ferry. The entrance to the West Seattle Ferry is carefully guarded by Norman and Gilbert, and few passengers who get by without purchasing a copy of the Post-Intelligencer. Both boys say that the morning edition is a splendid seller and growing so rapidly in popularity that they are seriously thinking of taking another member into the firm. Norman is 14 years old and attends the West Seattle School. He is in the 8th grade and believes that the morning exercise that he takes in selling his paper brightens him up for the studies. Gilbert is 13 years old and he is in the 5th grade of the Sacred Heart. Both boys are hard workers and firm believers in industry. This guy really loved his dog. Ghost of Melchior's dog bobs up in court again. Joseph Melchior, an eccentric character, owned property estimated now to be worth some $200,000. He thought so much of his dog, Hobo, that at his death he willed practically all his property should be sacrificed to build a mausoleum for himself and the dog. The will was successfully contested by heirs on the ground that Melchior was insane. When researching Joseph Melchior, he actually wanted people to call him Melody Choir. Boys at play hurl explosive. The peculiar appearance of cylindrical missiles a group of small boys were hurling at telephone poles and rocks at the rear of the James Street powerhouse attracted the attention of a miner who happened to be passing the place yesterday afternoon. Upon closer investigation, he discovered them to be chunks of giant powder. The lads had found a box of the high explosive lying in a pile of rubbish, and ignorant of their composition, were breaking them up and testing their marksmanship by hurling the pieces at various targets. The box, picked up later and taken to police headquarters by Patrolman W.W. Fife, was filled with at least 100 sticks of giant powder, with a weight of about 50 pounds and enough concentrated energy to blow several city blocks into small bits. Its ownership is unknown, but it is thought workmen engaged in excavation in the vicinity had forgotten the explosives and left it there. How did they dispose of this dangerous explosive? They carried the box down to the tide flats at midnight and gently submerged it in the soft mud.
This awful record, anyway.
At the store, silly.
You better not let Mother catch you.
You're wearing rouge.
Patricia Louise Edmonds, what are you up to?
There you go, acting like father on his high horse. There's nothing to get excited about.
Nothing. All the girls at the Burlesque Theater wear makeup.
Oh, no.
You didn't actually see a burlesque show.
Sure I did.
Oh, I know Mother wouldn't approve, but what she doesn't know won't hurt her at her age.